Here we go. Okay, I am very happy to be here for our 8th candidates for Assange. It's small but growing. I believe we're up to 21 candidates. You guys will make 23, I believe. Each time, though, we started having an activist guest on as well, either at the beginning or the end, just to kind of like tell a little bit more about what's going on the ground, in different places. And today we have Ann Wilcox. So I think what I'm going to do is just maybe, let's see, let me put you on full screen. I wanted to kind of start out with just showing where we are right now as far as House Resolution 934 goes. So these are our candidates. Sorry, there are a few are a little out of scale. I'm not sure. But it's growing. I mean, just just right before we did our last one, Cori Bush signed on. And I know there's a lot of effort to really push hard for the people that are already in office now to sign on. But as we mention every time here, our goal is to show that there are candidates running for office that would do the right thing and sign House Resolution 934. So we continue to say, call Congress, call your members of Congress and tell them you want them to support this and to drop all charges, and tell them you're looking at other options if they don't. So with that, I want to go to Ann Wilcox, who is in DC. And Ann, if that's okay, I'm going to put you on the solo layout and let you introduce yourself and say a little bit about what all you do.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you, Matt and me. I've actually been a candidate myself through the DC Statehood Green Party and served briefly on the Board of Education here. So I'm very familiar with the process you all are going through. In DC, we're in the prime spot here for lobbying for Assange, and most of our work is lobbying. We are promoting the resolution that you just talked about. We're really glad it has bipartisan support. Sometimes there's some strange bedfellows there with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Ilhan Omar. But we need to grow those numbers, and hopefully other members will jump on at the last minute. But a lot of what we do are vigils and protests and those sorts of things. We go once a month to near the home of Attorney General Merrick Garland, actually right outside his home in Bethesda. There's a schoolyard right across the street, so we put banners up on the fence, and literally his family, his neighbors, and his security see that we're there. And we're doing that once a month. That vigil was actually started by Paula from New Hampshire, who I know you've had on your show. And we think it's important to actually see that activists care. And we've also added, in addition to Assange, we've added a small vigil for Leonard Peltier as well outside his home, because these political prisoners, are being forgotten. We also go to the White House once a month, and that's kind of more of a zoo. There's a lot of tourists and others, but they see our banners. Some of them come up and talk to us, and they take pictures of our banners. So we feel that's valuable. We've had a number of really good rallies at the DOJ over the last couple of years. I know Matt has spoken at some of them, and other, well-known whistleblowers are there. We did a Hands Around the DOJ action, which was a sister rally with the Hands Around the Parliament that Stella Assange did. That was a year ago, October. So we all marched around the DOJ with yellow ribbons. So we do actions like that. And finally, we have gone to the British Embassy as well on a number of occasions, because obviously they have the power to deny the extradition, to say, yes, it's a political case. He's a journalist. He should not be extradited. But so far, as I'm sure you've discussed, the appeal is going forward. So or the extradition is going forward with some appeal issues still outstanding. So those are some of the things we do, and keep doing them. So,
do you want to tell a little bit about, I know you were in London for the most recent hearings. Do you want to talk about that a little?
Yeah, it was really fun. It was exciting. I went over there. There were a number of activists over there. Vinny DiStefano, who's based in LA, who's one of our organizers, was there. There were other journalists that went and got inside the hearing, like Chris Hedges and others. But there was a huge crowd outside, several hundred people from all over Britain and all over sort of Europe that had come in because they feel very strongly about press freedom and support for Assange. And they were, even in the rain, we were out, outside the cords for the 2 days. And also there was a lot of press there. There were networks there from different countries, even like NBC from our country. So finally it was getting some mainstream press, which was important.
Great, great. Well, I know I brought up something that I guess was a little maybe controversial or a little too bold, but when I was there in February, I in addition to giving out some of Paula's evidence files to members of Congress, I tracked down where the attorneys that were listed on the indictment, where their offices were, and I thought, I mean, peaceful action, of course, but what's wrong with this? Can we organize things outside their offices? Because these people that are behind this indictment, they have names. Who are they? And I know you're an attorney yourself, and you kind of push back. Maybe that's not the best way to go, but I don't know. Do you want to talk about that at all, or what are your thoughts on that now?
All of us are sort of focused on the Eastern District of Virginia. That's the court that case would be heard in. That's where Daniel Hale was sentenced a couple of years ago. It's an intelligence cases are put there. So that's kind of where our main focus is, to protest. A few of the prosecutors we know, like this Gordon Kromberg, who also prosecuted Daniel Hale. I mean, we might want to focus on those people, but as an attorney, I know sometimes you get assigned to a case just because it's your job. And we probably as a movement might want to discuss what the best strategy is, but
Right.
as long as you're not threatening anyone, whether they're a judge or a
Right.
lawyer,
Right.
I don't
Well,
know.
I think
Do
I
you have any?
told you I met someone who had been an attorney at the Department of Justice in a Twitter space, and she just kind of said, we just kind of put our heads down and did our work, and didn't really feel like they took positions on cases. And so, yeah, I see your point on that. But with that, I think we should go. Do you want to, or wait, before you go, or you're welcome to stay on if you like, but do you want to tell people where they can find you and where's the best, if they want to get involved? If you're in DC, obviously there's a lot going on, but if you have any advice for other places.
Yeah, look for us on Twitter. It's Assange Action DC, and we post a lot of our actions on Twitter. We have a Facebook group called DC Action for Assange. That's probably the easiest way to find us. And then we post pictures of all the vigils and things that we do. We send out an action alert every month or so under our Gmail address. So just look for us under DC Action for Assange and try to get on our list that way.
Okay. Okay, great. Yeah, some big dates coming up here. The anniversary of him being thrown in Belmarsh next week on the 11th. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we also. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Anne.
Thanks, Anne.
Thanks. Great to see everybody.
Yeah. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves? We could start with Ed. You're up here. Let's see. Hold on. Make sure you're unmuted.
Hello, Kelly. Hello, everybody. Yeah, my name is Ed Sine. I am a Democratic candidate for Indiana's Congressional District number 8. The longtime 15-year holder of that seat surprised everyone recently by not running. So it is an open seat, and it's myself and I think 7 Republicans on the opposite side of the aisle that are also running, and it's an uphill challenge, but yeah, I'm going to try to flip this district from red to blue.
Do you find the other people running are speaking at all about Assange, and have you spoken about Assange or freedom of the press on this topic when you're talking to constituents?
No, this isn't on anybody's radar in this congressional district. The conversation is dominated by national and geopolitical issues. There's nothing that's being discussed by any of the candidates on either side of the aisle regarding issues that are specific to this congressional district, which is the largest one geographically in Indiana and has the population centers of Evansville and Terre Haute. It's a very rural district, despite those 2 population centers in a very heavy industrial agricultural state. So the Republican candidates are all about who can be to the right of Trump and building the wall and who is more MAGA. And there are three other gentlemen that are in the running along with me, but they're considered outsiders and really aren't doing anything in order to raise their own visibility or generate funds to support their campaign.
Okay. Yeah. One of the things we try to talk about, Matt usually does the asking here, is what can we do, what can your candidates do to sort of bring this home so people understand that this case does affect everything, all of our rights. But let's see, let's keep going. We'll go to Chibu. I don't want to mess up your name. Your turn.
Yeah, hi, my name is Chibu Asonye, and I'm running for U.S. House Congress of Illinois District 13.
And do you want to say anything just quickly about why you're here to support Assange, dropping the charges against Assange?
Yes, I truly believe that it's important for us to protect our whistleblowers. I'm 27, and so I learned about Julian Assange through WikiLeaks, and my friends and interest and people around me were interested in being able to talk about these secrets that really shouldn't be secrets and declassified things. And so I see it from a citizenry perspective. I want accountability for my government. I want to know what's happening. And I believe that we have to protect the people who give us the information. And so, yeah, that's part of why I'm here. I think as a candidate, I'm able to let you all know that I want this freedom, and not only freedom of press, but independent journalism is also something that we have to protect. If we throw Julian Assange and we extradite him, I definitely think it's going to have a cascading effect to smaller independent media people.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're here, all of you are from 3 different parties. And, part of why we do this is, this issue is not about any particular party. So with that, Phil, your turn.
Oh, thanks. I'm Phil Anderson. I'm running for United States Senate in Wisconsin. I've been involved in politics, actively seeking office for about 10 years. Very fired up about the Julian Assange situation. I've been following along with it for quite a while. I've been doing a fair amount of activism here in Wisconsin, organizing postcard parties to support congressmen signing to House Resolution 934. I've did a Christmas Day protest at Senator Tammy Baldwin's office, banner drops, flag waving, et cetera, et cetera. And it's basically become, from the beginning, a centerpiece of my campaign. I mean, when I ran for state assembly in 2014 for the first time, one of my keywords was transparency, and that was only applying to state government and not the federal government, which is clearly the worst criminal of all in terms of suppressing information and lying to us about what they're doing. So I'm totally fired up, and I'm happy to see people from other parties that are fighting for this issue. And I have a question for Ed. Actually, I'm wondering if part of the response I've gotten from people that I know who are Democrats is that it seems like the Democrats aren't as excited about fighting for this issue as some of the other parties are. Maybe because Assange revealed secrets about Hillary Clinton. I'm not sure. I'm wondering if you've run into that at all in your Democratic circles in Indiana.
This topic, this subject, which I absolutely, believe in the importance of, as I've been following along really for years now, it's not even on the radar.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. Indiana has been a super majoritarian Republican state for almost 20 years. And the district that I'm running in is probably one of the 5 Trumpiest districts in America. And what Republicans are successful in doing is deflecting and burying any semblance of discussion on any policy issue whatsoever so that they can get away with what they're doing. And here in Indiana, because of the circumstances, the political circumstances, they successfully turned this state into a dumping ground, literally, for special interests and the playground for special interests. So it really is an information black hole.
Wow. Matt, do you want to jump in here? You haven't said anything yet.
Yeah, and sorry.
No, it's all right.
I was a bit late getting in. First of all, thank you all for joining us. if I was to ask you, why are you all willing to stick your necks out for this? Why are you willing to, entertain this topic when it's so much of the political and media establishment in the U.S. doesn't want to touch the subject of Julian Assange, WikiLeaks, press freedom? What's your answer to that? Why are you all willing to speak out on this?
Well, I'm a libertarian and I'm involved in politics because our government is broken and it doesn't represent us anymore. And there's nothing more emblematic of the government being broken than not only lying to us about what they do, but actively persecuting people who seek to tell the truth about what they do. This issue is central to the whole reason that I'm involved in politics in the first place. And obviously, running as a libertarian, I'm not in this just to win. Otherwise, that wouldn't be a great strategy. Running as a third party or independent, I'm in it to make progress on these issues at whatever the cost. So it's essential to who I am and what I stand for and why I'm fighting.
Great. Chibu, Ed?
Yeah, I can go next.
Yeah, please.
I'm with the Green Party, and beyond like true democracy and like freedom, something that I do care about is, as a lay person, I read through WikiLeaks. I read through the a lot of the materials and the stories that were being shared. People around me read through it, and so kind of like what some of the other folks said, we need to be able to hold people accountable. And if we are persecuting and extraditing to the place where we don't even know if they'll be able to not get the death penalty, because that's the other reason why I don't want them to be extradited. I do not believe in the death penalty at all. And I want whistleblowers to know that I am going to be a person in Congress who will protect them, who will care for them, who will do what we're supposed to do and take care of the people who expose something to the United States public. That's part of why I'm here. I want people to know that I'm here for the cause. Like, we have to stand up and do something to root out that corruption.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. And Ed, how come you're willing to stick your neck out on this one?
Well, this is an issue that really is emblematic of accountability, which we don't have in government. I'm running in a Democratic ticket because in order to get a seat at the table, I have to come across and actually be more of a centrist candidate to somehow appeal to that sliver of the electorate locally of self-identified Republicans and conservatives who feel that their party has left them behind. Transparency, accountability, the fact that we have a legislature that is dominated by people who can buy their way into the positions, and a government that is willing to do anything at all costs in order to enrich itself at the expense of our environment and our personal freedoms. This is what I believe is important, and why Mr. Assange's case is so crucial for more people to understand. We have a Republican Party that would just love nothing more than to have a war in order to deflect from the issues that they don't want to discuss at all. And that's why I was very, applauded Assange's efforts, and why he still represents such a grave threat to the establishment, because he did what needed to be done. He followed his conscience, and we need more people like him.
Absolutely. Matt, the talk you gave the other night with Kelly Velos and Daniel, sorry, forgetting his last name.
Davis,
yes, thank you. You were talking specifically about whistleblowers and how a lot of times, whistleblowers don't do what they do for accolades, and
right.
and they a lot of times pay a huge price. And I think hopefully we can change that someday. But for that, I have a great Guess Who clip. Nils Meltzer.
Excellent.
I always say whistleblowers, which are the people that supply WikiLeaks with information, they're the alarm system of a democratic society. They're like a fire alarm.
You call it a safety valve. a safety valve as well.
A safety valve, exactly, or a fire alarm. So, something's wrong. There is some smoke. There goes the whistle blows. It tells you, hey, there's something wrong. Come and correct it, because your house is going to be burning if you don't do anything about it. And so what you see now is governments are starting to persecute whistleblowers and the journalists that publish that information. And thereby, they're basically switching off the alarm system of society, which means that anything that goes wrong is now allowed to fester and to consolidate into criminal structures behind the curtains, which you can no longer get rid of, you see? And that's why they're persecuting these people, because they want to protect those criminal structures.
Sorry, proper credit there, that I don't have that labeled. It's from Randy Credico's Assange Countdown to Freedom, and that's Nils Meltzer, the former UN Special Rapporteur on Torture. But yeah, he's fantastic. I use his clips so much. But Matt, when you were talking about this on the other night, you also mentioned another whistleblower. And so I found a great clip that kind of goes along with this.
Right. Hey, before you jump into that, Chibu was so excited about this. I want to give her a chance to
yes, please do.
About it, to vent how she's feeling about that clip.
Well,
yes.
So I haven't been in politics, I think, the way some people have been, where they're career politicians in my community. Instead, I feel like I'm a layperson. And so I use the word whistleblowers. Like, Julian Assange is where the whistleblowers go, and I read the whistleblowers' information. So if I'm just here out and about and I'm seeing corruption, I want the people who are going to be coming in, like, they're going to have fear. They're really coming in courage, and they're doing the job that they're supposed to, which is caring for the larger community. I really truly want them to know that I'm different, which is why I'm running for the Green Party, and why, like, I need to show them, hey, you'll be protected here because you're the valve. You're doing your job, and my job is to protect you so we can care for our community.
Fantastic. Wow. Yeah. Well, watching that clip, one reminded that we always have to remind people that Julian Assange is not a whistleblower, but as Chibu said, he's the person that whistleblowers went to. And in the same vein, watching that, I was thinking of you all and the fact that the roles that you're playing by being dissidents in this political system, and even though you're running as, a Democrat, you are still very much an outsider, and you're still very much a skunk at the picnic kind of thing, right? So your roles as being whistleblowers within our own political system, I think, is something we have to recognize.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
We're not the skunk at the picnic. We're the flower in the garbage dump.
Thank you.
Yeah, make it sound a little better, buddy. We're trying to improve the place.
That's great. That's great.
Thank you, Phil. That's a terrific correction. I appreciate that.
So, okay, this is whistleblower Thomas Drake, and my clip is properly labeled here that this is from Assange Countdown to Freedom with Randy Credico.
Some of the things that WikiLeaks expose, particularly Vault 7, that people don't know about. Can you explain the impact, the magnitude of Vault 7?
It's tools used to, break into systems and around the world. I mean, that's basically what Vault 7 is. Obviously, the CIA was pretty hyper about any exposure of their tool set that allows them to go, hey, what the heck, we're a state entity, we're the CIA, we can go steal secrets whenever we feel like it. Sort of what Hayden said, we steal secrets. That was actually where that quote came from, by the way. Stealing secrets is something the United States loves to do, and they want to do it in secret. So, exposing something they're doing in secret gets you on the wrong side of the government. And then, hey, if it's that sensitive, we're going to come after you. And, how dare you? How dare you expose, because it's a national security secret? Gee, why is it a national security secret? Because we don't want people knowing, the public, we don't want them knowing what we're actually up to. I mean, people keep forgetting. This is the concern I actually have. Is you got to focus on the actual actions of the secret side of government. And why would they put themselves behind the veil of national security? They do so because they want to operate in the dark. They do so because it allows them to get away with things they normally could not when exposed to the light of day. That's the bottom line of all this. And if you happen to be a whistleblower, we're going to hammer you with the Espionage Act. If you happen to be the publisher in which that whistleblower went to or a source went to, guess what? Now, if we can get the precedent with Assange, we can go after any publisher. We can go after any media outlet who, quote unquote, reveals something that's unauthorized. The hypocrisy is that the government itself is the greatest leaker of all time. But that when they leak, it's authorized.
That right there, the government is the biggest leaker in my actual life. And I I want to even bring up like current points, but I'm just not even have any shade. Truly, my heart and soul, if the government wants me to think something, they will leak it to ABC, CNN, Newsweek. I'm seeing it currently right now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Anybody else? Jump in.
Well, information is power, right? I speak and interact regularly with young people for whom the post 9/11 world is all that they have known. And so the basic expectations of privacy that I grew up with don't even exist for them. They were even young when Cambridge Analytica happened. The monetization of our private lives and our personas is common today, and it's the expectation. And so I believe that the circumstances of Julian Assange represent part of a greater pattern of this eroding of not only the power of the people, but also the fact that the accountability, all this comes down to, we are the people. This is a government supposedly of the people, by the people, and for the people. And these special interests operate in the dark. So basically they can do what they do, which is their corporate greed, bottom line, and control. And I see this as part of a greater effort, and specifically the Republican Party. I speak with a lot of Unitarians, so a lot of independents and libertarians. So I understand the idea of the Unitarian Party, and there are moneyed interests on both sides of the aisle. That's a fact. But it's only through, I'm running as a Democrat because there are no centrists anymore on the Republican side. They're eating their own, and they're a hit list. And they're being very, very clear and none too subtle about what their ultimate their goals are.
It's interesting to having your perspective, Chibu, and then you talking about younger people, because we had another candidate on here, an independent, Jose Vega, who's in Brooklyn, and you probably know who he is, very outspoken. And we kind of all gasped, us older people, when, he said, I don't expect any, I grew up, post 9/11 world. And it's a very different perspective, but I think some of us forget, what that's really like.
Yeah, that's part of also why I think it's so important for us to protect our whistleblowers, Julian, and that freedom to publish these things. You can find stuff on the internet for years and years and years later. This kind of came up thinking about 9/11 with the Osama bin Laden letter. And if you all followed the TikTok story, that was fun over the last summer or so. But it was idea that Osama bin Laden wrote a letter. They published it on The Guardian, and then low-key The Guardian, maybe a little censorship, but they took it down for the kids to no longer read. And it's well, yeah, we can find, we can dig and dig and dig and dig for decades of internet data, and we'll find it, which is why we need to be able to protect the people who come forward with it, because it's going to be here for the rest of our understanding, at least of the internet.
Right.
I'm glad Ed brought up money, because this is really what this is, it's what it's all about. And one of the things that Nils mentioned, the phrase that he used, I think a couple of times, was consolidating criminal structures. And really the first criminal structure was the creation of the Federal Reserve 115 years ago or so, which enabled not only our government, but other governments to manipulate our money supply and basically inflate the money supply for their own benefit. And we're seeing that being expanded now to a foreign policy for the last since World War II that's been mainly about making money for certain people and stripping weaker countries of natural resources. And finally, it's come all the way full circle to actively suppressing and persecuting and torturing people that want to tell the truth about all that. It all circles back to money. And it's not just the Assange issue and the issue of the freedom to tell the truth and know the truth about our own government. It's just the latest symptom of this creep that's happened for the last 100 and some odd years. And that is an erosion of our rights as citizens, as people, our government not working for us anymore and working for itself and its sponsors. And it's just changed from money to violence and natural resources. And now the final nail in the coffin could be not making it so that we don't even know what's going on worldwide.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is what we continue to find as we host these discussions, is that it comes to this. We see that people connect all these different issues. And so we begin with this premise of discussing this, terrible injustice, this persecution and prosecution of Julian Assange, right? Of the travesty of our government trying to criminalize journalism. And ultimately, as you all are doing right now, this becomes an issue that touches so many different aspects of our lives. And I assume as well, something that you can then connect to so many different things in your campaign. And I'm wondering, as you go forward in the campaign, and again, people you're meeting are not talking about this. So how do you bring this up? How do you, one of the concepts, right, is to meet people where they're at. And most people don't know that much about Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. And many times what they do know is not entirely correct. So how, if you've been talking about this in this campaign, or in the future you will, how are you gonna approach people with this? How do you meet people where they're at with your understanding of Julian, WikiLeaks, and all the great things you guys been saying in terms of your own understanding?
Well, I found it useful to ask questions and just start with not ask questions of, are you aware of the persecution of Julian Assange, but just start with something much more simple. Do you like that your government lies to you all the time? Is it okay with you that they're actively suppressing the truth and persecuting people that just want to reveal the truth? And start there. And of course, their answers are going to be, rather than politically driven and taking a side driven, they're going to be, of course not. Of course they don't want that. Of course that is not what America is supposed to be about. And then you say, well, are you aware that this is what they're doing? And just let the conversation flow from there after you're already talking to them in a mutual sympathetic way, and not just start with his name or what exactly is going on as a way in.
Mm-hmm. Well, Ed, I actually have a question for you, because we have had very few, I think 2 other Democrats on. This is our 8th one. And I mean, I think I started this out, really, because these are nonpartisan issues, and I didn't want to sort of call that out, but it is glaringly obvious how difficult it is to get Democrats on board with this. So I'm wondering if you have any sense of that. I guess it does still tie him with the 2016 election. But I'm wondering how, I know Paula, who Anne at the beginning mentioned, she has been made a list of congresspeople that were against the TikTok ban, Democrats against the TikTok ban, and tried to she's been trying to tie that in, it was freedom of information, freedom of speech, and hey, are you looking at House Resolution 934? But have you had any sense of, if you have brought this up with either voters or anyone else running as a Democrat, what kind of responses do you get, and do you think there's a way to reach people that, like Matt said, where they are in talking about that?
Well, just a little background about myself. I started this race with basically at the filing deadline of February 19th. I was approached by the local county Democratic Party to do this. I do not have any political background or experience. This is my first race. The only requirements that I fulfill is, of course, the age requirements and the citizenship and the residency requirements. But when I considered about do I have any path of any viability at all? It really was a matter of like, well, how much social capital do I have, and can I leverage that into political capital? And over the past 5 weeks, I've actually been very, very successful in making meaningful connections with the political infrastructure, labor, and the business community. It's all about fundraising. That's the ugly side about getting into any kind of elected office, but particularly for a federal race like this. So I'm an outsider. That makes me unpredictable and dangerous, and it worked for Donald Trump. So I could tell you that most of the people that I interact with, they're low information voters, single issue voters, and I think the electorate that I'm having to appeal to is representative of the greater electorate nationally, which is many people tend to follow the path of least resistance. So the most engaged voters are the ones who are ideologically motivated. And what I've found and what I know is that I'm not going to win on a fact-checking contest with anybody. They don't want to hear it. We have our information silos. The consolidation of media has been a detriment to the democratic process. But I think by sharing fears and listening to people's fears, that is the way in. So in this community, a lot of people are afraid of their young people being educated here and moving on and not coming back and not carrying on the traditions of the farm or the land ownership or the community that is really very deeply appreciated in this part of America. This is flyover country. And just to give you a little bit more background, I've been living here for 25 years, but I'm a native New Yorker, born and raised in Manhattan. So I have a very, very different life experience from the people that are from here originally. In over 25 years of living here on purpose and raising a family, I have a unique juxtaposition when it comes to living and being raised in my formative years until I was 29 years old and working in a multicultural, multi-ethnic global city, and then relocating to a agricultural rural community like Southern Indiana. By sharing fears with these people, I think that's what binds us together. And so if you're fearful about your children not coming back after they're educated here or not having a chance, when I acknowledge that with someone who drives a tractor for a living and doesn't know anything about where I'm from and is grown up only in this homogenized community, this homogeneous community, then at least there's an opening. And if you're afraid of the government taking over, wanting to steal your guns, the Democrats, the Democrats that are characterized and assumed to be so by many conservatives in this area, then I thought perhaps maybe the link is also to say, well, what do you think about freedom of knowledge? And of course, that's what we're talking about. Accountability, transparency, so that people aren't victims of the government that they're supposed to be so proud of and want to fight for. So I hope that answers your question.
No, wow, that was very powerful. And, I always think that candidates like you guys are the ones that 80 million that didn't vote. You guys are the ones that can reach those people. They're disengaged, or they don't care. They don't vote because they think it doesn't matter, because it kind of doesn't if you're just flip-flopping back between the two duopoly parties. But no, I thought, wow, that was phenomenal.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. One thing that I tell people is, so my community, I say that it's not blue, it's not red, it's purple, because a lot of us are actually independents who will lean one way or the other, because in Illinois, it's such the primaries are Republican or Democrat and nothing else. And so what I tell them is and the other thing is that the community, whenever I talk to people, they always assume that the government lies to us. So that's just like the standard whenever I talk to anybody, regardless of who they are. The government lies to us. Okay, so if a reporter goes to the Edwardsville Intelligencer with a big scoop that is about the county and maybe like dark money things, would we want the intelligentsia to be like persecuted or not? Typically, no. We want to be able to have like freedom of press. And so that's really how I bring it back home. These national issues ultimately are trickling down to affect like our day-to-day lives and the ability for our reporters to do their jobs in our community to keep ourselves safe. And in my community, it's pretty much understood that both the Democrats and the Republicans are bought and sold and kind of corrupt, at least in our space. And so as a Green, I particularly tell them, look, I know that there's only two evils and I can pick one of the lesser evil. In my community, it would be like the Democrats. Sure, let them be great. However, I can't be an evil person. And so if I want to be different, if I want to show you all something different, if I don't want to be bought, I have to be a Green. And so this is me taking a very ethical step to show you all that that it takes guts and glory, and I'm going to continue to lean on that like legacy, because being a whistleblower takes courage and takes effort, and it also takes other people giving them protection. So I'm not going to fight on you. Be great.
Right. Well, courage is contagious, and I think yes, and Phil has mentioned it a couple of times that the whole narrative that a third party can't win was originally planted somehow. What are the details on that, Phil?
Well, yeah, the whole premise is that third parties can't win, and so you shouldn't support them, independents and third parties, non-viable, et cetera. And it's sort of a catch-22, because as the two big parties promote that narrative, and of course the mainstream media supports it as well, then people believe that when they're the ones that actually have the power to make that not true. Right. So it's sort of a circular reasoning, right? The people that we reach and that could vote for us and could support us are the ones that can change that and restore democracy and take it back from two dominant parties that don't really want democracy anymore.
Right. And I don't know the very latest statistics, but I know the numbers of people that are independent or unaffiliated are they're growing. I mean, every year. I don't know if it's the largest group yet, but it was getting there. So
yeah, and I want to mention one more thing too, if it's all right. I'm involved sort of tangentially, but also helping support the Bobby Kennedy campaign in Wisconsin. Did an interview on CNN Tuesday for his campaign, or I'm sort of on behalf of me, but talking about his campaign. And they just sent out an email to pretty much everybody in the country on the Free Assange issue, asking people to harass their people and their representatives to sign on to HR 934. So insofar as he's making that attempt, or his campaign is making that attempt to make their followers aware of it, which they're not all aware of it, that's only going to help the rest of us who are also not in the mainstream parties. Sorry, Ed. But anyone who's on the outside looking in, trying to get a wedge on this issue and talk about it, his campaign is going to be more active in terms of making people aware of it too. So that's just going to help.
Right. Well, if no one else has anything to say right at this moment, I've got another clip I'd like to play. We've mentioned, actually, I think, Matt, you brought it up at one point, Pompeo saying we lie, cheat, steal, or whatever. And so I put this together with a clip from Consortium News. You guys probably all know what Consortium News is, but if you don't, please go watch them, support them. But this is Chris Hedges talking about what's driving I just wanted to kind of bring it back a little bit to the Assange case itself and what's like coming up. But this was a discussion right after the last hearing. So here we go.
When I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CI director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.
I think we have to remember that the extradition request was only pushed forward after the exposure of the Vault 7 documents, which exposed the CIA's ability to hack into our phones, computers, cars, and use them as listening, recording devices, even when they're turned off. And so I think it's very probable that, and of course, this is not part of the extradition request, but I think it's very probable that if he is extradited, those charges will be added to the indictment. So the engine behind this is clearly the CIA. They have a vested interest in seeing that Julian is punished for this security breach. That's when you got the statements by then CIA Director Mike Pompeo that WikiLeaks is a hostile intelligence agency. I'm mauling the quote a little bit, but we have to remember that that's the engine driving this. It's not coming out of the Biden White House. Of course, it was Trump who demanded the extradition. It is really coming out of the CIA. And I think much of what happens to Julian is going to be colored by the character of the CIA. The CIA is, in essence, not an intelligence gathering agency. It's a paramilitary force. That's primarily what it does. That's why they discussed assassinating or kidnapping Julian, because that's what they do. That's what they know how to do. That's what they do all over the globe. And I think that factor is very important because the CIA is not crossed by any elected official. Dianne Feinstein tried to do that, and it didn't when this was on the torture because they're running black sites and were torturing. And I'll always remember that press conference where she walked out very ashen, and they had tapped into her computers, and I mean they sabotaged the entire investigation. And Feinstein, who's no flaming liberal, frankly, was appalled and said, you can't, I can't remember the exact words, but it was something like, you cannot cross these people. So this is an extremely important factor in what's happening to Julian. And I think that we can be very sure that the impetus behind the extradition and the demands for extradition supersede the Democratic Party and come out of the intelligence agency. And there's no question that if extradited, he will be hit with those charges for Vault 7, which right now are not part of the indictment. So that, makes me very pessimistic about Julian's chances because I think the CIA is determined to make him pay as a kind of example. So we're not really talking about the Iraqi war logs anymore. We're not talking about the Podesta emails. We're talking about something in the eyes of the power, especially the deep state power, something far, far, far more serious. And that's why is it advantageous for Biden to keep him locked up in Belmarsh? Of course. But I don't think Biden's driving this.
So that right there, I'll just address the elephant, or maybe I should say the donkey in the room. But I mean, this idea of saying the deep state, that's something that Trump said all the time, right? And so I think maybe Democrats sort of have this smokescreen, or Democrat voters, where they don't see that perhaps this is really when you look at why are all these things in the Assange case not going according to normal rules and procedures, the attorney-client privilege being breached, for example. And so Chris Hedges just sort of cut through it all and said, that's not what's driving this. Is not any one party. It's the intelligence apparatus. So I wonder what you guys think about that.
Right. And just to put some heat on the Republicans as well, because that Mike Pompeo clip, the way it ends, where he talks about the glory of the American experiment, and of course, not get into whether it was, other things about that. But what he's getting at is the idea that the glory of the American experiment in the common parlance is our Constitution, particularly our Bill of Rights. And so to have an audience and have leadership like Mike Pompeo, who says things about a secret government organization that lies, cheats, steals, of course, everything we're talking about with Julian and WikiLeaks and assaults on press freedom is, no government transparency, censorship, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then to talk about the glory of the American experiment and to receive applause for that, it's just maddening. It's absolutely, it is so aggravating to watch that, because what we're talking about here tonight, this itself would be something that the founders would have said, this is what we rebelled against. We rebelled against a tyrannical government. And here we have someone like Mike Pompeo cheering it on.
Right.
So I just, want to, because that point always sticks with me when I watch that. I hate when I have to watch that video.
Well, he said lie, cheat, and steal, but he forgot murder.
Yeah.
I mean, it's clear that they'll do that too, right? In which they might be doing that to Julian right now, actually. But
right. Well, but you're right though, Matt, about it. It's both parties. It does, that's kind of my point there, is that we know that, for example, Obama didn't pursue the charges against Assange, but then, Trump came in and that started that, but now it's continued under a Democrat. So it kind of does seem like it's not either party. So it's some other force. But anybody else want to chime in on that? What are your thoughts?
My reaction is threefold. One, fear is very motivating. The Democrats in my community are very afraid of Trump. That's just been a thing that's continuously come up. And so fear is what's bringing some of them to worry about the third party and spoiler effect, which I also tell them is a nonsense propaganda lie. It is curious that it's the CIA that is perpetuating this. The CIA that, in my mind and like my experience, ends up being the people who coup other countries. So I think that that's funny that they got caught on something that feels kind of more domestically an issue rather than like globally an issue. And so now they're bringing it back into their fold. And I don't know if it's going to be great for them in the long run. Then my last reaction is the swamp be swamping. The swamp is a beast and a mess. And the deep state is also what like we call the swamp too, at least in my community. And I'm just like, yep, they're both the same. They're one and the same, or they're different parts of each other. Whatever weird mycelium thing, but it's definitely dangerous. And fear will keep you quiet or will keep you willing to fund the machine so that way you aren't on the outs.
Yeah, George Galloway has a saying, something about it's both two sides of the same backside or something. I'm paraphrasing. I forget.
Right. And there's a Chris Hedges was talking about how Dianne Feinstein was fearful after the CIA hacked into her Senate Intelligence Committee's computers. Right. There's another similar quote from Chuck Schumer, who in the first month or so of Donald Trump's time in office, Chuck Schumer, I believe, is on Rachel Maddow's show, says something along the lines like, "What's wrong with this guy? He must be crazy. You don't go up against the intelligence agencies. They can get you 6 ways to Sundays," or whatever way he described it. But yeah, that type of the use of fear to either keep people quiet, as you said, Chibu, or to get them to support you.
Chibu mentioned coups. I think it's fair to say that if you look at the dominance the CIA has had over both parties, over our military, over everything, that there was probably by definition, almost the CIA has couped the American government, the U.S. government, and controls it, and our representation no longer works to the point where the two-party system is sort of a show to keep people mollified or distracted or hating something that's not the real enemy or whatever, when it's the CIA and the swamp that's basically taking control of our government, at least probably since the massive military expansion and intelligence agency expansion during the Vietnam War in the 60s. And they've couped us, if that's the right way to say it.
I absolutely agree. I wanted to jump in with second what you said, Phil. I mean, by design, the CIA exists to work outside the government and not be accountable to the government. And that's why its history is in, overthrowing other nations for geopolitical aims that too often just serve the corporatocracy that is, we know is in power, that influences policy, that writes the laws. And, the coup is happening here in America. When we look at the policies and the big issues that dominate political discourse right now, the majority opinion, and you name it, whether it's common sense gun legislation, education policy, climate issues, social justice issues, reproductive health care rights, the majority opinion is shared by that on the Democratic side, speaking for the establishment, I guess, even though I'm an outsider. And there's a reason why Republicans are engineering all of this, why there's something called Project 2025, and why the Heritage Foundation, a traditional small c conservative business friendly lobbying group, is now really the action arm of the Hungarian government and the illiberal democracy promoted by Viktor Orban, why we have a former president from New York, Trump, that is enamored of other authoritarians. These are all systems of government that basically promote an oligarchy and that oppress women, because that's a characteristic of authoritarian regimes. And the swamp be swamping. That's right. That's right. And I think that yeah, like the anti-establishment and populist message of Mr. Kennedy resonates with me, and I think with a lot of other Democrats, because he's right. You cannot argue, especially watching that post Super Bowl State of the Union 8-minute address. He covered a lot of bases, appealed to a lot of people. But I think, based on it's the state of the obvious, I think Assange's plight has to be mainstreamed by the Democratic Party, because in this two-party system, they're the only ones at least have some sense or even paying lip service to a moral compass and a understanding that accountability of the government is essential to a functioning democracy, and that we are the people and we are the ones that ultimately responsible based on who we vote for.
I think it's pretty easy to string all this together, the things we've been talking about for the last few minutes, into some historical context. Let's not forget what today's date is. But let's first look at November of 1963, when right after JFK started talking about, or probably not right after, but talking about eliminating the Fed and eliminating the CIA, he was killed. And then April 4, 1967, when Dr. King gave that famous speech, finally turning against the Vietnam War, exactly 1 year later, he was assassinated on this day. And the Assange case ties in perfectly because, as Chris Hedges pointed out, it wasn't as big a deal until he uncovered what the CIA was doing. Then it became an issue where he had to be stopped, and the CIA took control of the situation regardless of whichever party was in power, and insisted that what has happened would happen. It's all one thing, and the Assange situation is a symptom of it. And it's just the CIA continuing to keep the coup quiet.
Isn't it amazing, though, when you think of how many people is that? How many people make up that intelligence agency versus how many candidates like you guys are running across the country, and how many people would support you? I mean, it must dwarf that. I mean, exponentially, I would think. So I don't know. That's why I think this is powerful for everyone to talk. And I think, when you hear other people saying the same things, maybe you stop self-censoring and you start saying this stuff out loud, and you start talking to more people. You start talking to people who might vote for you. And hopefully that's where the change starts. But we are at the top of the hour. So I really want to thank you guys for coming so much, and for running, because I know it's a huge undertaking, and Matt knows that. Matt had a big victory recently. Actually, Matt, do you care to touch on that real quick before we go, or no? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, when I ran for the U.S. Senate with the Green Party 2 years ago, we had a petition to be on the ballot, and then we had to go to federal court and federal appeals court and state court as well, because both the state and the Democratic Party were trying to block us, slandering us and accusing us of fraud when we didn't commit fraud. And just this week, we won a decision in U.S. federal court where the Democratic Party was assessed damages because, in the words of the court, they had brought actions against us to keep us off the ballot that were frivolous and without foundation, which is the way the court speaks when they said someone was lying. They also said the Democratic Party had come into the court with unclean hands, which is also another major, damnation in terms of court speak. And the big thing was that most of the times in cases like ours, you don't get awarded damages because we have won. We had gotten on the ballot. So the courts usually say, you have nothing to complain about. You got on the ballot anyway. You won. You won here in court. You got on the ballot. You don't have a right to go after damages. But because it was so egregious what had been done to us in terms of trying to keep us off the ballot, the Democratic Party was essentially penalized for that. So it was a good thing for us in terms of a morale boost. But certainly it's, I think, something that people can look to and say, this is going to happen. They're going to do everything they can to keep folks who don't want to go along with the establishment out of office. And, but there are ways if you, I'm going to start rambling on all this. This is why you shouldn't have asked me.
Oh, okay. Well, it's
anyway, but just to say, let me just stop talking about myself and say, hey, to you all, thank you all so much for what you're doing. Folks who are watching this, please support Ed and Phil and Chibu. And if you guys just want to briefly just say where people can find you so they can support you.
I can be found at my website, changecongress.com, and of course on Facebook, which is the campaign page is Friends of Ed Sign. And Matt, congratulations. If the Democratic Party had put as much effort into working with you and broadening the coalition as they did in silencing you, they would be better for it.
Don't even get me started, Ed. Exactly.
I can go next. Hey, everyone. Again, my name is Chibu Asonye. You can follow me at Chibu for Illinois. And then my congressional campaign is Chibu for Congress.nationbuilder.com.
Awesome. You can find me at disruptthecorruption.com or andersonforussenate.com. And on Twitter at the number 4 Phil WI at 4 Phil WI on Twitter.
Okay. Thank you all so much. And this is Jesse Jett. It's a poem that I've played once before, I believe, but it's pretty cool. So thank you for coming.
All right.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for
having us.
If you thought you saw your freedom, it was truly a mirage. Freedom's locked a cell away from Julian Assange. Our First Amendment rights are by his side behind bars, and the next voices silenced will be ours. Rest assured, democracy is rotting in the dark. Rest assured, we vilified dissenters, pushed out black renters, and tore down their housing just to build a little urban park. God, I tell you, old America really knows how to leave its mark. Blaze a trail, leave 100 scars. Rip your free speech out your throat, demonize the man who told you it was so, and leave him freezing in a cell in Belmarsh. Perpetually awaiting extradition. Thrown to the wolves of claustrophobia and malnutrition. And all that we can hope is that we catch Uncle Joe in a fleeting lucid moment of his flickering senile fascist mission. That maybe we could trick him into thinking Julian is just some sweet blonde middle school Christian. And she got mixed up with a few bad apples, slapped with some charges, and thrown into prison. Joe would set him free without a moment's hesitation under one condition: that he can sniff her hair before she goes back to school and he goes back to business. But if Joe's just had his shots, then we haven't got a chance of getting past his black and white vision. Getting past his gut reaction to appease all of his donors' sick requests and shape policy and law around corporate mandated decisions. So really, all along, I think Julian was one man standing in a tempest with the fearlessness of true conviction. And if his is the only conviction we see after he shed a light on this country's most poisonous schemes all come to fruition, and we all collectively stare at the ground because we felt like our hands were too tied beyond signing petitions, while he's tortured to death for attempting to warn and enlighten admittedly not quite the brightest of citizens. And half of this country just won't take the time to uncover the truth, or they just don't mind, so they're quick to dismiss it and say it's a difficult position. Then we're back to the comfort of centrist delusion. We're right back to sleep for those ignorant sheep who resisted themselves into one protracted contusion, twisting themselves into knots to correct all your stimulus check-based confusion. Wrapping their necks around their backs as they justify overflow migrant detention or fracking pollution. Then Kamala laughs, and the camera pans down to her shoes. And that footage is 90% of your 6 o'clock news. Except for a feel-good story about a man who at 95 years young just made Employee of the Month at Whole Foods. And the $50 gift card means this month he'll afford his prescriptions and meals, and he won't have to choose. This is the machine that a man named Julian Assange threw his body on the gears of for you. So to cry out for his freedom is the least that we can do. Now best believe the feds will serve to muddy up the truth, but rest assured the temperature in Belmarsh is an icy 22, and Julian is shivering in a solitary room without a view. Rest assured Obama loves a whistleblower just about as much as he loves weddings where he doesn't get to detonate the groom. Rest assured Obama bought the plot where all our First Amendment rights are gonna rot and demanded that they carve his smiling likeness on the tomb. So that when you come to pay respects to your free speech rights and a somber feeling hits you and you look up to the sky, the answer will be staring you right in the eyes to the questions of why and of who. So if you thought you saw your freedom, then they wanted you to. Human rights are mutable, and Julian is proof. Our First Amendment rights are stuck in solitary too. And the next voice silent might be you.